Hi, I'm Amy Hawkins. We eat food every day, but many of us don't stop to think about where that food came from or what was done to it before we put it in our mouths. Did you know that today's average meal travels 1,500 miles before it reaches our tables? And a lot is injected into that food to preserve it along its long journey to our tables. Well, a new movement is underway to change that. The overall goal is to build a local food system in North Carolina that will provide more local food needs, provide greater access to fresh food, and protect the safety of our food. The goals also can protect more open space and our environment by relying less on food shipped here from across the country. But to accomplish these goals, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
The more we learned about the food system, the more convicted we became about changing it and in our own little way. And one of my little cliches is we were tired of food we were afraid to eat. And it's true, you know, became this real avid label reader. And if I couldn't pronounce it, it wasn't going in the buggy, you know, and I certainly wasn't going to eat it or feed it to our kid. And you know, more and more these days, it's harder to find, you know, food that is true to its origins or food that is not overly processed or preserved with things that God never intended us to eat.
Well, to me, local food is important because it allows me to have connections with people that are doing really important work. What I've found as I've tried to eat a local diet is that I've started building connections with people, and so now when I sit down to eat a plate of food, I actually can envision in my mind the people who grew it and be truly thankful for the work they're doing.
My partner Cassie and I have 10 acres over in eastern Lincoln County, and we raise primarily pasture-raised pigs, and we also do pasture poultry and ducks and some shiitake mushrooms. So it's a diversified little family farm, and we try and grow as much food as we can on that small piece of land. Restaurants and retailers make up about 60% of our overall revenue, and 40% comes direct to consumers. You know, we get to look people in the eye and tell them thanks, and you know, we get to feed our neighbors on a weekly basis, primarily through farmers markets.
I've actually gotten so involved that we ended up creating a company, my brother and I did, called Know Your Farms. And we go out to farms in the Charlotte area, and we pick up food from them and we bring them back to groups of people in Charlotte, Davidson. We have about 70 families that we work with right now.
Well, I think taste is important. We all know that that's probably the main determinant of what people eat more than the nutritional quantities in any particular food. And food that's grown locally and fresh tends to taste better than the canned spinach, say, that you may remember from school lunch days. Also, there's something I think very engaging to know where your food comes from, and to be able to go to the farmer's market. It's become a very social kind of atmosphere, and to know exactly who grew your food, where it came from. So I think those are greater benefits than, say, any particularly different nutrient composition. There may be a little bit of evidence that, say, organic food has some slightly higher nutrient levels, but if you think of the nutrition problems facing the U.S., it's really obesity much more than it is nutrient deficiencies. And if we can get people more excited about fruits and vegetables because they taste better and people know where they come from, I think that's going to have a bigger impact overall.
The food that you get in the grocery store is not always the same as the food you get from the farm. There's a lot in the form of labels that has come in between us and our food. So, for example, the term natural has been put on lots of labels. But what does that mean? And if you can't actually get to a place to see how they raise the food, then you don't really know. And they rely on us not knowing. They count on the fact that we are not knowing. And so we buy things thinking we're making good choices and are not necessarily. And that's even been seen with the organic label. The organic label has been used in cases by large-scale farming in ways that are inappropriate based on what I as a consumer might be assuming that label to mean. And so the only way to get around that is to actually create a more direct connection with the farms. And if the farms are close enough that I can get to them and can go see what they're doing, then I have confidence that I know what's happening there.
And I think the local economies, the worse that the global economy gets, the more we're going to have to return to decentralized economies of all types, especially around food. But the production of food touches our lives in so many different ways. This is the best way to start. Let's look at our food production and how can we improve that, and then from there, lots of other little pieces will benefit from that improvement and get to do their own sort of little revolution. And I think that's where we are, not just with food, but our whole way of thinking and working together needs to be rethought. Every dollar that we spend with local growers stays in the community. It's a dollar that can be spent 7 times over in the local economy. It's not sent to China.
Preserving a local economy translates to lots of things that we value, from preserving the environment and thinking about climate change and how seriously we need to take that, to health disparities and access to fresh and local foods. If you think about the economic development potential, if every North Carolina citizen spent just 5% of their food dollar on sustainable local foods, that would be about 55 cents a day. And that would mean $1.7 billion for the local economy.
Generally speaking, it's still a bit higher cost, I think, to buy locally, because in order to make a fair return to the farmer, and because they're not benefiting from the economies of scale that have all kinds of other trade-offs in terms of energy and that sort of thing. But one thing to keep in mind is that in the U.S. we spend less of a proportion of our budgets on food than just about any country in the world. So we've gotten kind of spoiled and I don't know, accustomed to the fact that we don't pay very much for our food, and you could question whether that means we don't value our food and that we don't put a priority on that in terms of our health.
Young people don't have a lot of motivation, a lot of economic motivation to dive into farming as a livelihood, and we need to restore food production to its rightful place of honor and to ensure that the people who produce food are paid a fair price for their products. If we don't get our entire communities to care about farms, then there won't be any more.
The average age of producer now in North Carolina is 57, and we tie the nation for loss in our farms, tie for first. So there's a lot of reasons, even if you're not in agriculture, that putting your food dollar in local sustainable products is good for the state.
Support your local farmers markets. Those are a great way to do it. But then also look for things like what we're doing in the Charlotte area with our food clubs. When we bring food back from the farms, we provide an online ordering system so that you can go out and see what's available. We're trying to take some of that work out of it for you. Since I'm already doing it for myself, you can tap into that. If you don't live in the Charlotte area, you can create your own food clubs that do the same thing. There are plenty of examples across the state where they're doing that, meat buying clubs and things like that. So there are opportunities to tap into something else. You just have to get creative, and you have to be willing to kind of look and hunt around for it and ask for it.